Good morning and welcome to the Northern Institute's People Policy Place seminar series. My name is Katrina Bricknell and I'm the Partnerships Coordinator at Northern Institute. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. For us, Northern Institute in Darwin, it is the Larrakia people. We pay our respects to Larrakia elders past, present and emerging, and further extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. This morning, we are very privileged to have Dr. Julie Owen and Dr. Lara Cain Parade. Lara will be joining us shortly. There she is. Hi, Lara. Presenting from Library for All. Library for All is a not-for-profit, publishing physical and digital books for children at low or no cost, all with a focus on literacy attainment. Today, they will showcase their research developing the Our Yarning collection across Australia, and this set of 500 books aims to mirror the lived experience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. So before I hand over, I would just like to say the presentation will go for about 30 minutes and then you'll be able to ask questions online. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section, which you'll find at the bottom of your screens. So I'll now hand over. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Lara, you're sitting in Brisbane, is that correct? I'll just get people a sense of place for us.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, here on the Yagara and Turrbal lands in Brisbane. So thank you for having me here.
And I actually live in Broome, and that's Yarru country. Originally, I'm from Adelaide, though, so a bit of a gypsy, and love being back here in Darwin, especially in this lovely weather we've got. Good stuff. As was said before, we create books and we are looking to find a collection of original stories from Aboriginal people, and we run workshops which help people develop the skills in writing. And our acknowledgement is what we do for every workshop, that we are operating across the globe and our base operations here in Australia. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And usually if I'm in a workshop and there's somebody from the country, I ask them to welcome us to country. So that's part of what we normally do. Thank you. As we've said, I'm Julie, Lara, and Annika is quietly sitting in the background, but she's our program coordinator based here in Darwin. So if you're in Darwin and would like to talk to somebody in person, please make sure you contact her. So for the next 30 minutes, we will tell you as much as we can about Library for All, the research behind what we do and how this informs the collections that we are building. Our Yarning collection is my baby, or what I'm hoping to develop, and how we are building this collection. And as was said before, let's have lots of questions at the end. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you, Lara, and sit down and watch the show.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks everyone so much for joining us. It's a pleasure for me to tell you a little bit more about Library for All and about my role with the organisation more generally, and how that intersects with the project that Julie in particular is carrying forward at the moment, the Our Yarning collection, which is very exciting for us. So Library for All is an Australian not-for-profit publisher. We have a mission to make knowledge accessible to all equally. What that means is that we're in the business of, I guess, breaking down barriers, cost barriers and technology barriers that people experience when they're needing to access books and educational resources. We have a vision to create and deliver technology-enabled education tools for the world to improve educational outcomes for 20 million children by 2030. So it's a really ambitious target. We know that, but we pride ourselves on being ambitious. And we are growing very rapidly and, really making great strides in our research and development at the moment. So, that target is looking reasonable. We're optimistic. What we actually do is we publish culturally relevant and age-appropriate books. Now, that includes books that are to be printed, conventional books for our app, which is the Library for All app that you can access for free today from the Google Play Store if you have an Android device. We don't have the Apple version of that ready to roll yet, but it's in progress. So free library in the palm of your hand at any time. We also have a box of tablets. We call that a Spark Digital Classroom Kit. That at the moment is being deployed primarily in our international programs, and that's a kit of 20 to 40 sort of low spec Android tablets in a robust sort of weatherproof box that we can deliver into classrooms. The reason that we do all of this, I guess, is we know from UNESCO research that there are around 617 million children, a staggering number around the globe, who are not able to access education to support their literacy development. We also know that even if children are attending school, that there are millions who won't achieve a functional level of literacy. Now, there's multiple reasons for that, of course, complex social and political economic reasons, but one significant cause that we've identified is a lack of resources, and that's particularly age-appropriate and culturally relevant educational material for children. Now, even in Australia, where we have a pretty robust education system overall, we know that there can be a lack of diverse representation in education materials, as well as cost barriers to accessing sort of high quality and diverse books and resources. So Library for All hopes to fill those gaps and provide culturally relevant and age-appropriate books in languages and depicting contexts that children can understand and relate to. Without those types of educational tools, we know that children might face a lifetime of illiteracy and the dire consequences of illiteracy, including discrimination and inequality, poor health and low opportunity. So LFA uses what we call a disruptive low-cost publishing model. So it's a little different from traditional publishing. We're able to create books at scale, at a lower cost, high volumes, to get as many books into as many hands as we possibly can. One of the ways we do that is by using a Creative Commons license. So some of you will be familiar with the concept of a CC BY NC license. So that gives us the freedom to make additional versions across print and ebooks, to work in multiple languages and formats. But of course, the authors retain the original copyright for their stories still. It just gives us some additional flexibility. So that's generally what we do. We're very transparent about all dimensions of the way that we sort of have created this sort of unique publishing model. Our goal, of course, is to leverage those tools for education benefits across the world, and increasingly now in Australia. Okay, so a bit about the general background of LFA. So Library for All started in 2010 when our CEO was really moved by vision of the earthquake that took place then in Haiti. She went over to Haiti to help with rebuild efforts, noticed that there was a real paucity of resources and assumed it was because of the earthquake, and then realised that, of course, a lot of those communities had never had resources in the first place, and certainly not culturally representative resources in languages that made sense to them. So the organisation grew very quickly from that point. We achieved non-profit status in 2013. We are now working across all of the countries that you can see listed there on the slide, so around the Pacific and Asia, moving into Africa now with Ethiopia programs stood up. We publish around 80 books or more a month into these various programs across a range of different languages and formats. So we've come a long way since our initial startup stage, clearly, but our priorities remain the same, which is creating books at scale at a high quality standard, guided by research and evidence, and being responsive to the needs of the communities that we work with. So about 18 months ago, we also came in under the Save the Children family of organisations. So we're now a social enterprise of Save the Children. That's given us a lot more opportunities for expansion and impact. with their backing, which has been fantastic, but we do remain an independent organisation in every other way. And importantly, we've moved our capabilities a little from just responding to our perceived needs in communities, although there's value in that as well, but moving more towards a research evidence base. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. You can always go to our website to see more of our research output, which is published there. So my specific role is as the Specialist Librarian for Library for All. And the reason that we have a librarian, I mean, it might seem obvious we're a library, but one of the things that we consider to be really important is that our library is not just a collection of books. So it's not just an online collection like many others you might have seen, but it is a multifaceted library and it's a curated library. So our yarning will be a subset of that and will be specifically curated for content, marked against a very specific collection strategy that has been developed to support, I guess, in response to community feedback around the needs. So our content strategy ensures that our library, and that means the whole of Library for All as well as each subset like our yarning, achieves a range of reading levels, fiction and non-fiction books, a range of content themes, just like any other library that that any of us would want to use anytime. And that's so that we make sure that we're maximising the literacy aims of the program overall, the educational goals, but also really encouraging reading engagement and a love of reading and a longer term interest in reading. That's a big point of difference for us compared to some other online book collections. We create about 70% of the content in our broader library, and that will be even higher for our yarning, original content. What that means in terms of a curation and an acquisition strategy is that we can look at things like diversity and representation and gender equity right from the get-go. We're not retrofitting those things into a library down the track. We're establishing a library from a wholly ethical perspective by looking at all of those benchmarks that we would really like to see reflected in our collection, which is very important to us. So that's the ethical side. On the educational side, we also know that research shows that children do better in learning to read when they're offered a variety of high interest resources that complement classroom activities. So our collections do include some decodable and phonics style books, like you might expect from classroom readers, for example, that have an explicit literacy intention. But our collections are also stacked full of interesting narrative stories, creative non-fiction, factual books that span the reading levels from around beginners reading level of around 4 to sort of upper primary level. But we acknowledge, of course, there might be a range of different age groups that would be accessing this content at each of the different sort of levels. So this idea of complementing classroom activities is also an important differentiator for Library for All. Because our app is freely available on the phone, the books or on a tablet, the books can be read anywhere, anytime. And that means that we can follow our readers from the classroom to the home, to the community space. Let's face it, lots of our kids are on the phone anyway now. So they can have that continuity with their reading from the sort of classroom learning to a supported environment where there's no cost barrier for them to access a complete library of books at a range of different levels and interest areas. Now, all of this curation is backed by research, as I mentioned. You can jump on our website to libraryforall.org/research to view some of the working papers that we've been loading there recently, and those support this kind of strategic acquisition process that really sort of underpins our belief in the importance of quality, not just quantity, when delivering books to young readers. You'll find research papers there that give some more, I guess, explicit statistics around diversity and representation, the importance we see there around translation and mother tongue language publishing activities, and around the importance of combining phonics with rich text reading materials. So you can, I guess, have confidence when looking at a Library for All collection that there's very substantial backing to what we've put there, compared with a lot of other online content that might not be curated quite as rigorously. So to dig into that a little bit deeper and let you know, I guess, exactly what my role is when we're talking about a curation strategy, if we have a batch, for example, of 500 books, as we do for our yarning, we'll carefully line those up and to sort of dissect that to look at exactly how many fiction and non-fiction books we would expect to have in a collection of 500, what reading levels we want to focus on, and so on. We do that for each of our program spaces. Now, our reading levels are not curriculum aligned reading levels. They range from level L, which is complete beginners, so 2 or 3 words per page, through to upper primary level. We see this as, I guess, a reading runway. So rather than being a levelled reader program in the sense that you might have seen in classroom readers, it's just a guide. So it allows for readers to self-select in an area that's interesting for them, and to self-select a level that they either feel confident to read, or if they're looking for more challenges, they can do that too. So we want the reader to be autonomous in their ability to select, if that's something that they're looking for at the time. But equally, the same kind of reading runway can support parents or teachers as they try and fit suitable resources to appropriate abilities. In addition to the levels, I should say, we have what we call content pillars. So our collection spans science and the environment, sports, arts and recreation, health and hygiene, and cultures and communities. So across those 4 broad pillars, we think we've covered quite a lot of ground in terms of children's interest areas and desirable sort of learning spaces. We talk a lot about windows and mirrors in our collection. So some of you who might have worked in children's publishing or any of those or education librarianship before might have heard of this. It's a pretty well-known theory. And it posits that a great library is made up of a combination of books that mirror our lived experience, so where children can see themselves reflected in the story, and a complementary number of window books, which are those ones that allow us to look out to different cultures and imaginary spaces and open our minds. So it's wonderful for children to have a combination of both of those things while they're learning to read especially, and for their longer term education and literacy engagement. But in Australia, we know that for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids, there is an oversupply of windows. So compared with some countries where we work, where there is very little publishing at all, we know that in Australia there's a healthy publishing industry. Outside of cost barriers, books are available, but they are not necessarily the mirror books that give children that strong sense of identity, and that also have literacy and learning benefits. We know that that's the case. We know that vocabulary can be improved by children being able to read books that represent their local environment, not to mention obviously just purely ethically why it's so important for our identity construction and diversity and acceptance for books to be representative of all of the different kind of people that we see around us. So what we do to establish this strong, diverse, representative collection is that we work with communities to gather stories. Now, in most of our collections, we would balance those windows and mirrors, but for our yarning, there's going to be a very strong mirror focus. So that will be all about talking to people about their stories and getting those, recorded and then edited. And Julie will talk more about that shortly. Across our programs, that's our model, is to work with communities. We also then sometimes work with education consultants to balance the collections. We work with local or contract illustrators, but always with cultural advisory input. As I mentioned earlier, we ensure that storytellers retain the copyright for their stories, but Library for All consults to obtain an agreement for publication so that we can then share the books on a non-profit basis across multiple formats. And that will then allow us to reach as many readers as we possibly can. So I think that's probably enough from me. With that background, I'll pass over to Julie, who can talk really specifically about how these processes are going to be used in Our Yarning collection. And I look forward to your questions later. Thanks. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Lara. I probably have limited time, so I'll go through as quickly as possible, but please make sure you give us some questions. So, as Lara was saying, we're trying to get 500 books in our yarning collection, and hopefully this will be done in 5 years. We want to look at the mirror books in English as the language of instruction, and we do recognise the importance of language, but we don't have a suite of linguists and translators, so we concentrate on English, and hopefully this will encourage kids to learn to love reading by the time they get to school and have that confidence to read both in English and in their language. We look at the printed books, so I'll just show you one that's probably a little like a learner one. So they're basically 1 or 2 words on a page with a beautiful picture. This one is probably the one that kids love the most, go on fishing. And then you have a little bit more of a story. And then you have one that's probably in more of a science environmental type of book, and that's sort of a fiction. Non-fiction, working in the Australian space really, and then also like here we're doing the virtual, but we also do workshops in person, so COVID sort of allowing. Last month I was up at a small community north of Broome and doing some beautiful workshopping with the lady rangers, the buddy rangers. And I had visions of their beautiful stories about their work, but they all sort of went fishing. So, and it was really funny because after they finished the writers' workshop, they were going out to do chainsaw training. It's like, oh, I want to hear about that. So we have all sorts of interesting things happening in the workshop. Thank you. So we had lots of conversations with people and really value the networking. We have already published books from the Honey Readers collection, with Margaret James in the centre of Australia. I've worked in person in Doomadgee, in workshops in Perth, Derby, Coulterman, and hopefully Darwin. And we've done a weekly virtual workshop with Muddy at CAPS here in Darwin, but Annika has been in person every Thursday. And we are doing some workshops here in Darwin, and on the way back to Broome, we'll drop in at Kununurra and do some workshops there. Thank you. So they're just some of the pictures that we have. On the far left, we have the Doomadgee workshop where I actually got to meet Lara, and the books are being translated into the community's 3 language groups, and they actually do want them to stay in the community. So we won't publish them on the Our Yarning app, but if you ever get to Doomadgee, you better look up the books and you can see them there. Then I used to work with Catholic education and connected once again with some colleagues, and their faith, Aboriginal families as first educator playgroup teachers and teachers assistants were having a workshop in Derby, so I just sort of gate crashed, took over. Did a workshop with the ladies in Derby, then they had their networking one in Perth, and I then gate crashed again and did a workshop with them in Perth. And you're still storyboarding the stories for them. On the far left, we have the Bardi Rangers and the group there. And this is a photo of the CAPS ladies here at Darwin. So we're sort of getting around a bit. Thank you. So for our yarning and our future goals, we would like to have, what I call black up. So I'd like to have more Aboriginal people in the group to help me give advice and to network and to have input and possibly stories as well. So we're looking at setting up an advisory group. We would like to have an ambassadors or friends of the Library for All, so that we can promote the program more nationally through the contacts they have. I'd love to have a full-time illustrator, which is, sort of the first dream. And we're working on trying to get some part-time illustrators, because the books are beautiful and they are colourful and just eye-catching. So I get you to a blank page, of course, don't I? They're absolutely gorgeous. But for me as an Aboriginal woman, they didn't mirror an Aboriginal kid or an Aboriginal community. And I helped give advice to the illustrators, but they were people living in, Russia or Poland. So it was a little bit hard to, those little things that we know as Australians and as an Aboriginal person make that picture really, sort of connect and be a mirror. So the illustrators is something that, we're really working on. And of course, expanding so that I'm not the only Aboriginal person in the organisation that will go out and run community groups and sort of sit with people who get original stories. Thanks, Annika. That's it. Oh, look at that. We've got 2 minutes. Unbelievable. Do we have the link to one of the stories for the Deeper and Deeper?
Yeah, so when it will come out, lovely Lani's going to sort of send information out, and we've got links, but on our homepage, there's
come.
Okay.
Yes, so
okay, oh yeah,
who's talking? So ta-da, and
Julia, the first time yesterday.
Okay.
Yes, no, so we have, so all the books that Julia has shared are from our collections overseas. So we've got collections here from the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea. I think we've got another book which we don't have with us, but we've got in Laos. So, but please sort of demonstrate that sort of intention of a mirror book. But yes, and you can see one of our books on our homepage. The book's called Deeper and Deeper. And Lara, I think it's from our Solomon's collections, Deeper and Deeper.
It was originally for Papua New Guinea, and then it's been adapted for Solomon's as well. Yeah, but and there are 3 books on the website on the YouTube page to give you some.
And so when we send out the presentation, the link to our YouTube books will be there. And certainly, and on the on the Library for All app, that's got access to the Papua New Guinea collection. It's got our yarning collection on there as well. And I've got, for those people in the room, I've actually got the app, the tablet, so you can just have a look at those as well, but you can't download it.
And just so that, I'm not quite sure whether we said it before, but once the library is downloaded on the app, the children don't need Wi-Fi. So that means kid can sit under a tree in, out at Balgo or, it's anywhere under a tree and read the books, and they're not going to use up the Wi-Fi, and then, there's no cost at all. Okay, I think that's...
I actually, I'm just going to have a quick look here. But whilst I'm having a look at these questions, I just have a question. So Marg from Department of Education in Alice Springs. I might just read yours, Marg. I'm the Bilingual Education and Indigenous Languages and Culture team in the team down in Alice. There is a digital library of books from years of work by First Nations storytellers, a living archive of Aboriginal languages. Do you have plans to connect with the content in this valuable collection?
Lara.
I'm happy to sort of speak a little bit to that as well. Just part of those conversations, yes, is the sort of
a bit bigger answer.
Yeah.
But the thing that we found when we were in discussions with bachelorettes was that there needs to be a lot of time and effort put into going out to communities to talk to the authors, or possibly, the families of the authors who may have passed away, to get consent to have this now little book that they wrote on an app that's sort of globally. So, and as there's only sort of 2 of us and we're both part-time, it's something that we want to do eventually. But also, we're going across the Kununurra to talk to the language nest people there, and they've got books in language that we want to maybe say that can we put them on an app in English because a lot of the languages we do want to promote, but we need to, and we're having that trouble in Dumaji at the moment, we need to have the proper translations, and we need to make sure that the words are written properly. And it's an oral language, and there are so many ways to just write English words. Imagine how many ways to write, Aboriginal words. So, have you got anything else to add to that?
No. Lara, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to say that, we're definitely always interested in learning about other collections and any kind of partnership opportunities that might be able to get any of those resources disseminated more widely. The other thing, though, is there's also sometimes an issue around file types. So our app uses a particular type of EPUB, so even if books are available in PDF elsewhere, there's a conversion process, and that requires funding. So there's just a few discussions to have, but absolutely, always let us know about those collections, and we can, start the conversation. That's what I would say.
And certainly because our Yarnings app sort of really still at its sort of infant stage and beginning, it is about how reaching out and making those connections and networks and what possibilities exist out there. There's so much work done in the Northern Territory in the 70s and 80s in the education space, so very aware that there could well be some amazing cupboards which have got books in them and manuscripts that sort of need to be brought into light. But how do we do it in such a way that's respectful of the process that was taken when they were created and putting them into current technology? There was, just in touching on technology, there's a question there from Madeline, and thank you, Madeline, for your question about our app. So there's a question, so thank you, great, wonderful work, so thank you, Madeline. So the question from Madeline is, in the app, I cannot see how to share the app or specific books. I also cannot see a way to log reading and or favourites in the app. I may have missed these features, but I'm wondering if there is a plan to improve engagement or logging with the app. For example, apps like Google Goodreads and let the reader rate each book that they read, keep a wish list and keep a log of their reading. This is also a function to set a goal to read X amount of books per year. This might make the app even more fun and rewarding for young readers and their parents and families.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We're working on it.
Yeah. Oh, Julia, I'm going to come closer. They can't see you.
It's okay. You can answer.
Yes, I think so. We've got a team. We've got a technology team, and they are on our list of things that we're sort of working on. App improvement is one of those. So we at the moment, as a not-for-profit, we receive funding through, a lot of our funding comes through philanthropic or through project specific. So it's a big piece of work to sort of do what you're suggesting, Madeline, and if it's okay, I might even screenshot that, because we are sort of gathering all of these, how do we improve the app? And absolutely, we do want to make our app much more user-friendly. We acknowledge at the moment it has got, it can be improved dramatically, we know that, and certainly the more feedback we get like yours, Madeline, is really appreciated, so we can take that to the tech team. But yes, at the moment it's around finding a funding source. Maybe somebody knows a really great tech developer out there who wants to put some money into developing our app. But it is just, at the moment, and particularly for our yarning, so we've currently got 20 books in production that should be coming out at the end of the year. And so we're sort of, the focus is the work that Julie and I are doing on creating the books, but yes, getting the app up and running. It's one that we want to work on as well, but we'll take that to the tech team. Thank you.
Well, we've got someone in New South Wales. Hello, how's the weather?
Yeah, exactly.
Teresa, yes. Yes.
Oh, great.
Okay, are you here? She's a student here. Come and meet us. We're here for a few days.
Yeah, Teresa, if you are in Darwin at the moment, Julie and I are running workshops. We're actually running a writer's workshop tomorrow. So if you are in Darwin and want to come to that workshop, please come along.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you quickly, Julie. It's not on here, but it's a very quick question. Just the process from, so we do a workshop. What's the process from you doing a workshop with people and gathering the stories to an end product in the book? What's that from a publishing point of view?
We got time? I'm just conscious of the time. Yeah. So we we sit with people, we go through a slide sort of skills, upskilling people about how to tell a story, and usually, like I'd say, that the story's in your hands. So we have a 5-point sort of teaching process. Then the students or the participants will write a draft story based on those 5 points, which sort of guide the story and the process. Then I will take those drafts away and storyboard them, and then continue to email or ring the person so that I haven't lost the story that they wanted to tell, and, you know, by putting it into my own thoughts, and maybe those words weren't what they would use. Then I send on them to Lara, and she waves her magic wand with the librarian stuff about content and pillars and levels. And then we then have a process. It's about a 2-month process from the workshop to the published book. And then we get back to the authors again to say, this is the book, what do you think? If it's a book that is published and it fits into our library, we send them a printed published book. And then, do you want to show the app? Have you got that? Yeah. And then it's on the app, which, as we said, it can be accessed on the Android or an iPad. And the book's there for future generations. But that's the app that we have.
I can walk really close.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm on my app, I've got an offline version which has got the Papua New Guinea collection with it as well, the Our Yarny app. And there are also some insight tools. There are some insight tools about how we build those into the app.
So we don't really have this app for Australia, because we do have so many resources and so many, you know, kids are at school and there are things there. But with the phones, we're hoping that we can reach those kids that will just be on community and not have access to those books in the library. Okay.
Teresa's in South Coast at the moment.
Oh,
next year we'll be back to
okay. So if you think that you might have a story to tell, then please contact me. We can do it over a phone, do it via email process, or you know, if you are in Lara and have some time, please come and join us in person. I think that's about it. Are there any more questions?
No, that's no.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the Northern Institute, thank you very much for the whole team for doing the presentation today. We really appreciate it. That was
Thank you for
awesome.
having us. Yeah.
No problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to let everyone know, as they were talking about, Library for All is going to be running free children's book writing workshops the next couple of days on CDU Casuarina campus in Blue 2.
Yeah.
But if you want to find out more information, please, you can call 1300 730 935, or I think Lani's put some details up in the chat.
Yeah.
And there's an email there to find out more details about that. And yes, we will be connecting the Living Archive, you guys, with the Living Archive of Aboriginal Languages, which is a Northern Institute project that we're very
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So thank you everyone for joining us today, and yes, have a wonderful week, and I hope you can join everyone in the workshops.
Thanks, Lara.
Yes,
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks.